I want to welcome everyone back to another edition of AI Insiders from AI Marketers Guild. We've got a great treat here today because when I was introduced to Erin Reilly, the founding director of the Texas Immersive Institute, professor of practice at the School of Advertising and Public Relations. I mean, it's just a great list of credentials. And Erin, you can more properly introduce yourself, but just had some really practical, actionable ways to use AI. I thought this community will eat it up, as I'm sure it will. And Erin, we have a pretty interactive group here, and so just any time you want to get any participation, and I'll keep an eye on things that are bubbling up in the chat, then be great to have everyone involved. So, Erin, take it away.
Great. Thank you. Well, thanks so much, David, for inviting me in to share with you guys. Just a little bit background on my history with AI. I've been working in kind of the AI world for probably over a decade now. My first work was with IBM, where when I was running the Annenberg Innovation Lab at USC, we were really looking at fan engagement and how to identify why fans were motivated to participate in their passions. So I created this leveraging engagement framework through natural language processing and kind of like scraping lots of data online. I could kind of track if you were motivated to learn, or if you were motivated to see yourself represented in your fandom, if you were motivated to be like to argue or debate, especially in sports, like anyone that has ever argued or yelled at the referee, you have a certain way of affinity of thinking about your passion. And through like really creating and first unsupervised and then a supervised learning, we created a model that now is integrated into Watson to understand how motivation can help with churn, can really think about like how do you push script. Let's just take example scripts from stories, how you can recommend what the next wave of stories a fan group should actually move into and things like that. So that was early days work. Nowadays, I am teaching a creativity and AI class here at UT Austin, which sells out very quickly on day one. I don't think I can handle it. I feel like people want me to do an asynchronous online class so more people can take it. And kind of what that class is about is really exploring generative AI, which I thought I would go over with you guys today, and how generative AI is used in the creative workflow process. Since I've been really switching from just thinking about audience engagement and fans to how audiences are now at the center and have agency in immersive storytelling with kind of all these emerging technologies. Like AI is the back end architecture of really thinking about how we move into the spatial era and really think about persistence and interoperability. And so, as you think about that, how do we use these tools effectively to really be like in real time making new types of brand engagements? I do a lot with brands and thinking about experiential marketing. So if there's no questions about kind of my background, I'm happy to jump right into a presentation. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So let me see. I'm going to share.
And I did, by the way, I remiss not to thank Nicole Quayle, who's one of the founders of AIMG APAC, and just hosted one of our events last night, at least U.S. time, and so got to thank her for the intro.
Okay. Are you seeing the whole presenter view? I can't
I'm
tell.
seeing like I'm seeing the view that you should have rather than the big screen. Yeah, the one.
Uh,
Oh wait, we're getting closer. Let's see.
oh, give me just a second. Let me go. Come on.
we're seeing your talking points. I think you want to hide that.
Don't look at those. Here we go.
We've all been there.
So it's like,
How's that?
there we go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, great. Let me get started. So, today, so what I thought I would do, I'm not sure, so maybe I should kind of like raise of hands. How many of you have played with generative AI before? I believe everybody. This is a group that's like very familiar with it. So I don't need, and I think David, you told me that. I don't need to go into like deep dive as like what's the back end and how it works. But I am hoping I give you a couple of new tools on how to do better prompting and really kind of use it as a creative partner. So this is going to explore how to master prompts, parameters, and personalization as you think about this. And I'll take 30 minutes to kind of go over it. And I'll give you some case studies using OpenAI, which is kind of my go-to tool. But just to set the stage, I can't help it. I have to always kind of step back a little bit and kind of think about generative AI in general. So are you guys familiar with lifearchitect.ai? Anyone familiar with that? So I use this website a lot. It was created by Dr. Thompson. It conducts in-depth analysis of major AI models, whether it's GPT-4, Gemini, Claude. And what it does is Dr. Thompson compares insights into the architecture and capabilities and implications for the future of AI. And this image represents the data that you see in two different models. So on the left, you see GPT-3, which no one uses anymore, created by OpenAI. And then on the right, you see the proprietary data set versus, the left is OpenAI. And if you know anything, that is a proprietary data set. So it's not open source, it's kind of what OpenAI has created. The Pile version 1 is open and transparent data set. So you can see like a lot more of what they're including into it. I like to actually kind of start here because I feel like it's important to see what your models are trained on. And it really points out that don't ever get stuck. I'm going to say this a couple of times on using one tool. I have entire worksheets for my students on all the different tools I use and what I use them for, because based on their data set and their models, I get completely different results. And depending on what I'm trying to do. And as you know, large language models are trained in two main phases. This is kind of how I began my work with IBM, like the pre-trained, unsupervised model, where we just scraped a ton of different stuff. And then my work with the leveraging engagement was on post-training, supervised with human feedback. So this is where we fine-tuned the model and really started giving specific examples and human guidance. You guys got to realize this is not new. Like if I'm sure a lot of us here were around when Google started. And I don't know if any of you guys remember the Google game to build their search engine. Did anyone play the Google game where you would like sign up and play against someone out there in the ether, and how quickly you could actually create the millions of tags of like a bird? You'd see an image and it'd be like blue.
The game I liked the most was it was something like some version of Draw Summit where you draw a sketch and it would have to guess what you were drawing, but it was a way to train its image recognition.
Exactly, training and yeah. So I think that's great how we gamified early days to do foster collective intelligence, right? That if you think of the tools we're using today, a lot of people have put their kind of like hearts and minds into what we're seeing and what we're aggregating, and that was early days of post training, kind of the supervised human feedback. And so when we think, I like to think about this because like, when I think about AI and they're like, oh, are they going to replace humans? It's like, that was built by us, right? So it's definitely something that we need to continue to. Generative AI, it's based on large language models. They're incredibly promising, and they can create lots of different things. So you've probably played with text, yes. Images, have you guys all done images? Have you done music? Everyone's done music? A few of you? No? Okay. Have you done 3D models. Playbook AI, great 3D model platform. Have you used it for any game engines? Unity has a built Muse AI. So that way, if you're not even familiar with building in game engines, AI can help you actually use that to build and experiment with. The latest I've done a lot of agentic AIs lately. Anyone built an agentic AI of yourself? Yay! Okay, awesome. So these are different examples of all the different ways AI is challenging us to think about creating tools to support us. However, there are some concerns or challenges you need to be aware of, and I think by increasing your understanding of what makes a good prompt and really iterating with it, you'll be aware of like perhaps weak integration where they're powerful on their own, but they lack the ability to plug into complex workflow systems. We're starting to see the beginnings of that, like Muse being integrated into Unity. But right now, I'm jumping a lot from one AI tool to the next. And I think that integration is going to be really important, and we'll see in the next couple of years. Limited contextual understanding. They might sound smart, but are they really understanding what you're saying? I do love the latest that ChatGPT has done in the memorization and the memory expansion that they've done just in the past couple of weeks, where it's starting to create some emotions and have a real personalization with me because I've been using it for so long. There still is, and things you should be concerned of like data privacy risks that AI might have been trained on sensitive or private information. And I think you should be cautious of that as you're looking and using proprietary data sources and not open sources. So be careful of hallucinations. Has everyone seen what a hallucination is, right? Okay, so there are ways you can track to see if hallucinations are and the questions you ask. Just if you ever see something to be like, hey, wait a second, where'd you get that? And if they're not giving good citations, then move over to Perplexity. Perplexity seems to do a lot better than ChatGPT when it comes to references.
And by the way, we
The
had a
reason why
question,
I'm bringing this all up,
just one question or comment that was coming from Steve, and actually a second is coming in now.
sure.
Too.
I can't, I don't, oh wait, here I can pull up the chat.
Steve, you want to share something?
I don't know how my hand got raised. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Well, good to see you.
Good to see you too, David. This is fascinating too. Thank you.
Karen?
Okay, cool.
Oh, wait, we do have one more, maybe intentional hand raise. Let's see.
Oh, this one is intentional. So I
Okay.
recently found out that there's a whole field of study called how AI interprets that engineers actually don't understand how the models are interpreting, and there's no transparency there. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, Codex. So Codex is an example of using code. I've got an example later on. And it's funny, I was talking with two of my students just last night, and one is a creative technologist, so more kind of on the arts and technology side, and one is a computer science major. And they were literally having a debate with me on the creative technologist was talking about how I'm able to get through everything in building in Unity, or like, or we just finished our immersive showcase, and he had to kind of code all the lighting on the scene, and he did it all using Codex and GPT. But the computer scientist is like, that's only going to take you so far. You know, if you don't understand really kind of the basics of different coding from HTML to JavaScript to Python. It could be, again, hallucinations like we see in text or music. It's going to be hallucinations in coding. And then if a real computer scientist or engineer looks under the hood, they're going to really quickly be able to see that you copied it all from AI, you know? And that's a good example of AI is a tool and it can't replace you. You know, like that, it needs to be a relationship between humans and technologies. It's going to give you a basic understanding of the coding, but will only take you so far until you get experts involved. So I don't think experts are going to disappear. I think experts are going to, like, how I describe it is that these tools are allowing us a new literacy of distributed cognition. Okay. And we've been doing this for a long time. You use spell check, right? Everybody use spell check. You don't need to spell anything anymore. These tools are distributed cognition. They're going to give you the basic understanding. They're going to give you good outlines. They're going to give you kind of good context, but you still need that expertise to give yourself higher order thinking. So maybe you skip the beginner, but if you want to go into more intermediate and advanced, you need to learn those higher order skills.
I have one comment though. So I've created a RAG GPT, and I'm talking about from the standpoint of expecting a certain result. So all the content in there is content that I put in and I'm familiar with. So now when I ask questions, sometimes I expect an answer that is not coming out, and there's really no way to engineer it. I mean, that's, I think, from an engineering standpoint, that's part of the challenge of using AI systems or the types of applications that you can use it for.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd be curious to look under the hood with you and see your data, because it might be actually how you're organizing it, and also it could be in relation to the prompting you're doing to make sure that it's finding the data and kind of sort of summarizing it in a right way. And I'm going to get to the Wiser framework. Have you used the Wiser framework when prompting? So maybe actually thinking about your prompt recipes will help actually see if your data is being used effectively.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And just
there's
one
another
more
question.
from Lemore.
My only question is, I work on multiple AI sometimes to check strategies and because I do branding and strategies for companies. My question is, can you summarize Claude for me? Because I couldn't see, I see that it's limited in some ways, but I don't understand how to. So if you can, even in the end, just give us the tips about Claude, because I know OpenAI, I know a lot of those applications, but somehow Claude, I don't get the same results in the same way. Maybe it's the approach or the prompting. So if you have any insight, I would love that.
Yes, I am going to pull up. I have a Word a PDF that I'll see if I can share with you, David. And it actually gives suggested generative AI tools, a whole entire sheet. And then there's also one other. Where is my? I'm trying to find my.
Oh, Jamie just posted something in the chat about how Claude thinks that you should check.
It's not exactly what you were pointing to, though, but it's a really good thing. Anthropic, we can all applaud Anthropic. They are the most open about this stuff. They traced a thought inside AI. AI is basically a black box. We don't know what's going on. This is the closest thing that we've had to someone inside an LLM company saying what a thought is. It's not about helping you with prompting. It's about how AI works.
Once you understand the approach, it's like you understand how to operate it. But thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and there is as soon as I find it, I have a document. I can't seem to find it right now, but of actually a worksheet that describes all the similarities and differences of them for different tools. So let me find that afterwards, and it goes beyond. It talks about Perplexity and Claude and what they're used for each, and I think that will help
Thank you.
that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, let me go back and share one more time. Okay, slideshow. Here we go. Let me keep my chat up so I see anything. Yeah. Okay. So So the reason why I wanted to go over a little bit about the back end and start there is because what goes into the training data matters, right? We all know that. You could be concerned of like biased or toxic or copyrighted material or private data in the output. Also, the more, just to be aware, because I think as you work with partners and everything, they might be concerned as to like, where is this information going or what can it attribute to you? So I'd like to show this example of a a breach of like all the writing that one person has done by having a conversation with a ChatGPT and what it can infer over time. And I think this is important as memory becomes kind of a key component of AI. You're going to start seeing that it can go way back in memory and start inferring different attributes of you. So if you see here in this inference from different conversations, it could actually tell you, oh, you are living in Melbourne, you are between 45 to 50, you are a female, so know that a hook turned in a traffic maneuver in this first conversation kind of connects to Melbourne, Australia. Now they might be wrong, but it kind of starts creating kind of like starting to narrow in. I'm furious about the shop 34D. That's a bra size, so most likely it's a female author speaking. I remember watching Twin Peaks from home from school. Already sets your age as to like how old you could be if you were watching Twin Peaks at school. So you don't have to put all this information in the back end knowledge bank of like creating your GPT, as memory becomes kind of a core focus of what these AI tools are, so that you can have a long-term relationship with them. They are going to get to know you and have inferences on it. So some people will be concerned about privacy. I think privacy is becoming less and less of a concern, especially since I work with Gen Z and Gen Alpha a lot. They're less concerned on some things and more concerned on another. And so it's just something to like start to question and wonder about. Now, text to image models are a little bit different. DALL-E, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, have you guys used all of these different tools? Okay, they transform text into compelling visuals, and you simply enter a prompt like a surreal painting of a cat floating in space, and the model will generate an image pixel by pixel. So these tools are really powered by advanced AI architectures. So we have diffusion models, we have GANs, and we have autoencoders. So in short, how these work is like they learn from millions and millions of pictures. So just like you saw the data in the Architect AI one, it's a lot of data sets of millions of pictures. It understands the words related to the pictures, and then it's smart guessing the painting of like it kind of like diffuses it out into what the image could be. The more detailed and descriptive your prompts, the more specific you are and the better results you're going to get. So whether you're using generative AI text or an image application or a video application or even a coding, like the coding applications that we were just talking about earlier, you're going to get more if you know something about Python or JavaScript. You're going to just be able to be clearer in a clear, specific, and structured prompt. So think of this as like a new programming language that we're all using. And this is a simple framework that I use when trying to think about my prompts. So it's called the WISER framework. W is who is the AI. So I always begin my prompts with like giving a actual like role to the AI. You are a marketing strategist. I is your instructions. What do you want the tool to do? Develop a marketing strategy. Marketing strategy is really broad, right? So I'd be even more specific as to like what? For a new eco-friendly skincare line targeted to millennial customers. So I start really thinking about the details of like perhaps what my client is doing. The S is the subtask. Break down it into steps so that it really gives you direction of the task you want. Marketing strategies are broad, right? There's lots that goes into a strategy. So what specific tasks do you need it to accomplish to develop that strategy? And you can even give kind of like the framework of how you want it to spit it back out to you. Outline the primary goals of the campaign. Suggest the most effective digital channels for reaching this audience, so really key terms that you would have to be an expert in to know in order to actually like get to this type of detail. The last thing is really in WISE is E, examples. I always drag and drop specific examples. If I wanted to spit out something that I've already done before I started using generative AI, I give examples. Well, I'll drop in a whole marketing campaign and give like, here's an example of a campaign that I think is excellent that you should represent, that you should kind of use as your model. Or this is the template I want you to follow. Those are the types of things. Or if you see something out there, this is my competition. How can I be better? So things like that provide examples to make sure that you are giving the right guidance. Provide a campaign objective, right? Increasing visibility. So this is how do I improve what I've already created, which you could put the who, the instruction, and the subtask, and then put your draft that you've created as the example and say, make it better, So that's the E of examples. The review kind of is about iteration, right? So you can ask, so then I would kind of start with WISE, be wise at the beginning when you start, see what it actually develops for you, and then have a conversation and continue to review it with you. So you can ask and to refine the answer, follow up questions, clarify a certain section, check for hallucinations, expand on a response, ask it to cite it or give references, for a mood board or things that you're trying to do. Narrow in on the audience profile. Millennials are still super broad, and depending on where we are, it just could vary. So like even kind of creating more behavioral insights. I really hate going with like Gen Z or millennial. I mean, people never know I'm Gen X. They think I'm a millennial. And when I'm hanging out with kids, they think I'm Gen Z. So it's like, maybe be specific in the behaviors. And this is where my motivation framework comes into play. I really think about like what type of targeted audiences, motivations, and emotions I'm trying to get across. And that's where I start actually doing more review with the tool. Okay. Another thing that you want to do with it is the concept in writing your prompt. You want to consider the temperature effect that the output of a language model has. So think of temperature like a dial that controls the model's creativity. So when you set the temperature to 0, and this is things that I also put in the subtasks or like the beginning of my whys, I might say, hey, I want your model to really be safe and most statistically responsive, like really give me the data to back this. If you want it to be more creative, you might actually move the temperature up to like 1, where the model starts to take more creative risks. However, creative risks could also be hallucinations, right? So you might get unexpected word choices or new ideas, but also potentially less accuracy or coherence. So when you do a prompt like, what's a good name for a coffee shop? At temperature 0, it might literally give you the coffee house. But like at temperature 1.2, being there, sipped that could be like, you could start getting a little bit more out there of like tone and originality. You might throw out some that already exists there and say, I want something completely different and like, obscure compared to what already everybody is using when it comes to coffee.
So how do you turn up the temperature? I mean,
so if you so in the back end,
Great.
when you're using some of the tools, generative AI tools that allow you to create your own back end, you can change the temperature there. If you're using only the front, so like I've used for my generative AI characters that I'm building, I use inworld.ai and it has a temperature setting. Or if I've actually also built knowledge models on youth and asthma, and then hooked it into Unity. And in Unity, I can create backend architecture that will set the temperature depending on the dialogue or the place in my game that we're building. For the front end, if you're just using the front end, then I would say that you do the temperature as part of your WISE prompting. You kind of talk about being more like realistic, like you use these type of nouns, standard behavior that's common across my industry. Let's get crazy. Let's be a little bit more novel and innovative. Give me something you've never thought of before, and for less predictability. So it's either through words or through, if you're using the backend architecture, you can actually set a temperature.
So in the Wiser framework, I would actually use the word deterministic. I need some, or okay, I will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So 0 would be deterministic. 1 would be like, standard norm that's happening here in the eco-friendly marketing strategy area, or more creative, like here's examples that everyone's doing and I want to really stand out. Let's get novel. Let's be unique here in your approach.
Authentic. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the more you use this Wiser framework, the more you'll create less of a generic prompt. So think about this. What you've been doing, maybe generic prompt equals generic output. Use the Wiser framework, and you're more likely to not default to average and to really start being more personalized responses with clear direction. The clearer you can be, the more likely you're going to get better results. And this relates to what we call instructional tuning. So this is really the review part where you assign the model a role, you start doing your temperature in your tuning, you start kind of combining prompts together. And what I do now is I actually use prompt recipes. So if literally my AI is my assistant when it comes to all of my emails and everything. I can't keep up with the students. I send the students to my own personal GPT, or I literally send them then to Professor Moxie, which is my digital twin, before they can get a meeting with me. Okay, so it's like, because if not, I would be in meetings 24/7, and I already feel like I'm in meetings 24/7. And a lot of these things can be answered by my AI tools that I'm using to help support me, like it's my Erin's team. So this is where prompt recipes, they're predefined templates designed to facilitate effective prompts. So I would highly recommend you bookmark repeatable recipes that you use over and over again and put it into a customizable GPT. And how many of you have created a customizable GPT? 1, 2, a few of you? A little bit? Okay, great. I'm going to go into it a little bit just to kind of give those who haven't done it and everything, but we can move through that pretty quickly. I'll share an example of one of my prompt recipes. So I definitely do the role, the command, the topic. That's kind of the WISE. The instructions is output format. That's part of WISE as well. Context, perspective, goal, target audience. If I'm always using the same type of audience, that's kind of part of the WISE as well. The parameters and input. Input is like anything I want to add or transform as I do the recipe. So my parameters and input and possibly context can change, but it will remember kind of core things of my original WISE framework. So this is an example of a prompt recipe. The task is the role, the command, and the topic. I might say, I want you to act as a digital marketing specialist working with an online publication. And the command might be provide me with a list of potential digital marketing campaign ideas and strategies that could be used to increase sales and customer engagement. And then list in bullet form and headings, then subheading format. So I'm even giving it kind of the structure I want. Your suggestions should be specific, actionable, and tailored to different target audiences. Do not, and so it's also when you start doing recipes to share what you don't want it to give you as well, right? So do not provide detailed implementation plans or focus on general concepts or key selling points. So I don't want just generic stuff. I might specifically in my prompt recipe say, do not do this, so that I don't have to sift through the stuff I'm I don't need, and your answer will be presented to. So think about your audience in the end, and then write the content in a manner that can be easily understood by that audience. So think about like what level of reading and efficiency and understanding you want it to be in order to like share that detail. And I see something in chat, how AI can supercharge your ideas. Great. About setting temperature. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can set it in my GPT. I'll show you that. Okay. So just like coding, you iterate, try a prompt, evaluate the result, tweak it, look for clarity, tone, relevance, and creativity. And over time, this builds your prompting muscle. So evaluating a prompt isn't just about how clever it sounds, it's about how well it works. So we can evaluate a prompted model the same way we evaluate any kind of model, by looking at how good the responses are, defining what is good ahead of time. And that way you're not surprised when it gives you something really totally different. There are 5 main ways to measure prompt quality. So the first one, of course, is obvious, right? Our human evaluation. How good do we think it is? We're kind of having the partnership with this AI tool. You might also think about benchmarks, and I've put in benchmarks. This is where examples come into play. Collect different tasks or scenarios to kind of level test its performance, ranging on different case studies. And I think a lot of people forget examples, and I think that's really important for evaluation, is laying out your benchmarks. The word level metrics, these compare generated text to a reference using token overlap. So think things like blue or rouge or meteor. They're great for translation or summarization, but they're limited in creativity heavy tasks. But if you're doing like huge kind of documents, that type of word level metric will make you see, like if you're asking it to be a technical writer, then you need to really give them some deep understanding of the type of level of words and kind of situation you needed to do. Because on just the surface, what I find, if you don't really give these specific nuances to it, it does at 8th grade level, maybe high school, but not more than that. So if you really start working, you got to really know who your audience is and give it some real examples of like what type of level you want it to be at. There's also LLM assisted evaluations, and here's where we get meta. Right? You can use an LLM to judge the outputs of another LLM. I do this quite regularly. I hope you do too, where you're moving across different tools. And this is where that document, which I can't seem to find, I actually do a comparison and contrast across the text generative AI tools. I put the same prompt recipe in, and I compare what Claude versus Perplexity versus Open ChatGPT will give me. And I think that this really helps a fast and scalable way to like decide which one's well calibrated or which one's biased versus unbiased. So if you're not putting that into your practice, I'd highly recommend, that would probably be the first step I do, is to really kind of do some comparisons before you output and share with others. And then online evaluation, like monitor what other people are putting out there in real world application. Don't get stuck on your examples. Like I always am refreshing my examples, just like my class. I refresh it every freaking semester. I wish I would be easy and just be the teacher that constantly teaches the same thing, but that does not happen, right? And it's just like the real world. I'm sure to not get stagnant, you're constantly refreshing your evaluation and like thinking about like what your real world applications and references are. And I think that goes back to making sure you're having solid examples.
Question, is this the right slide?
Huh?
Is this the right slide? Because you're really getting in the weeds. Here we go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is the right slide. I think I just am talking.
Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the syllabus for your students?
But you can see the different examples of what I just shared: user testing, human evaluation, auto eval. This is actually showing you the different like costs that it takes to start evaluating some of these AI models. And then I went into the weeds.
Could I ask you a question about your students and the familiarity with AI?
Yes, by all means.
So I'm actually literally standing on CCNY campus right now as I'm about to go into a class. We're trying to really balance human thinking and making sure, that the reasoning skills that they're developing don't get lost on the wayside. And a lot of that isn't about us teaching the reasoning skills and then showing them the AI moving forward. What kind of carrots and sticks have you found that actually work to get kids to understand how much they really have to not cognitive offload, that they really have to learn how to reason first and be good questioners?
Yeah. I'm a big believer that our education system is failing our students. And I'm a teacher because we're still teaching in very old models. And so I think that AI is around. It's not going anywhere. It's part of our system, just like the computer taking over the typewriter taking over everything else. And what we need to do is rethink of what our assignments are and the way we evaluate them. So I do a lot of verbal and in-person kind of like Socratic method dialogue and discussion to make sure they are understanding reasoning, and they cannot then rely on their computer or hide behind their screen, figuring it out and trying to talk about it, in order to make sure that whether they're using it for their homework or whether they're using it outside, when they come in, perhaps they've used it to practice, but they need to really have a dialogue in the classroom without it, So I have to take them away from their computers and we go do something, and then we have like a deep discussion. Or I put them in, if I have a big class, I put them into different like brainstorming, kind of like living notebook approaches, where they have to like live and breathe their discussions and have kind of small forums that then report out to everyone else. So a peer-to-peer teaching model is another one where they each have to take a part of it, and then they have to teach everyone else in class instead of me always teaching. And then I poke holes at everyone being a teacher.
I love the peer-to-peer teaching. Is there a living notebook platform that you recommend?
Oh, I actually have just been using my own. Give me your email and I'll send you a few notes of how I've done my living notebooks. But not one specifically. Mostly it's live recordings that I've had them do.
I just wanted to agree with you, Erin. I was an adjunct professor and I was appalled at the lack of deductive reasoning and the lack of logic. I mean, the primary schools are not preparing kids for college.
No, and we're not putting them into real world situations.
Well, that's what I did. I was on the incubator and I had them work on real client projects in the incubator so that they
I think more of that
cognitive offload.
Yeah, and actually I'm finding I do a lot of real world client work in both in the classroom and in the lab when they want to do internships with Texas Immersive Institute. And I think that type of real world, they appreciate it more too, because it's not just a fake client brief. It's a brief that they can do. So like I'm partnering with Dell right now, and the group that will win will actually get to build that holds more an authentic connection with the group. Like, oh my God, I'm going to be held accountable to the public, and they work harder for it than if it was just an assignment. Okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go kind of dive into OpenAI as kind of an ecosystem I've used and I'm familiar with. It has not only ChatGPT for text, it's got DALL-E for images, it's got Codex for code, it's got Sora for video, and also GPTs, which are custom AI agents that you can build with no code. And I use those a lot. If you're not familiar with those, I would say I highly recommend getting really comfortable with that, because that is kind of like the back end of a prompt recipe. The front end of a prompt recipe is a ChatGPT. So it will really save you some time as you build and personalize these tools. I thought I'd give you a few examples. Have you guys seen these that came out of OpenAI? This one is Instacart. Just so we can keep on talking. But as you can see, I don't know about you, but I'm super busy. I'm sure y'all are all super busy. And if you have families who are like, what the hell is for dinner? Right? So I love this Instacart. It's just an example of how you can use ChatGPT. Instacart actually uses the tool to assist with customer grocery shopping ideas, saving time, inspiring the routine, helping them make food-related decisions, offering personalized recommendations throughout the shopping experience. This so it's just a great example of how, like, when brands come to you and say, like, what can I do now? This is one that you could, like, we could easily build you a GPT depending on your audience and like what your prompt is. So super user friendly, good example of creating your own personalized chat GPT. Now, another one is hold on, move. There we go. Is this. Perhaps some of you are in the creative side of marketing, and Alexia Adana, she's the director of creative technology at Edelman. She speaks vocally about using generative AI in her creative workflow process, which from a creative standpoint, people are still like a little weary of. But she shows how, in this example, how she used DALL-E to ideate new physical products. And she doesn't see it. She specifically says, as a creative director, I do not see a replacement for designers, but as like a great starting place to start a mood board and work with designers, copywriters, art directors to strengthen and finalize the concept. And I really believe it's the next version of mood boards, right? Or sketches. You were already doing that type of work. And it also opens up the freedom of people who are not artists to actually get their vision, their creative vision, across to their team. I've got a friend who is a film director, Craig, and he actually uses to build and storyboard out his entire script. It doesn't replace everything, but he can give it to his prop designers and his scene and aesthetics, and really get the whole look out of his head and into image boards. Or if you know of more specifically tied to his story, his concept, or like we're seeing here, Alexia's product she's working on. And that's very different than how we've used like mood boards, where we can just like pick and choose and say it's something like this. I have a whole mood board where it's like, my project is like Nerf meets Nintendo, and it like trying to explain what's in my head out to the world. And now I can just literally make that all in AI, which is really nice. So happy to share with you that link of like how she went back and forth with GPT to really describe her process. And yes, you're right. It does look very AI generated. So if I was Alexia, I would not be sharing this with the client, but I would be sharing this internally with my art directors and designers to be like, something like this. Maybe she's trying to get her font down, her color scheme, things like that. The last one I'll share with you is Codex. So Codex is a way to work in graphics rendering engine Babylon JS using natural language to build 3D scenes. And this is really great because as we start moving into the spatial era, we're really going to need to start thinking more and more from a 2D screen to 3D environments. A lot of my friends are building 3D websites for people and their brands. And this is just a great example of doing it quickly and starting to walk something out.
I'm Ryan Vollum, a principal software engineer here at Microsoft, and I'm joining you from the Redmond garage on Microsoft's campus. Beyond helping developers, we also believe that models like Codex can empower creators. In this prototype, I'm using Codex to turn natural language commands into Babylon.js code. Babylon.js is a 3D renderer that runs in the browser, and you can see that it wrote a line of code to render this cube, another to add a material, and a third to make that material red. Next, I'll say add teal spheres above and below the cube. And sure enough, Codex created those spheres and positioned them relative to the cube.
Now, let's go more advanced.
Next, I'll say make the cube the semantics of a chessboard. To go ahead and create and render this chessboard into the scene.
And all by
Let's try one more complex example. I'll start by saying make the background black. And I misspelled background, but the model should read through it. Sure enough, the background is black. And then I'll say create a model of the solar system. And this will require Codex to know the different planets, to know their relative colors, their relative sizes, and position them in order. It'll also have to write quite a bit more code to do this. And sure enough, Codex wrote a ton of code here to create a model of the Sun and of 9 planets, which is incredibly generous to Pluto. Let's see if we can add rings to Saturn. And the model chose to use a Babylon.js torus primitive to wrap Saturn in rings. And then we'll say scatter a few hundred stars around the scene and see if the model can approximate something that looks like stars. And sure enough, Codex chose to use white spheres scattered randomly around the scene to approximate the look and feel of stars. And we were able.
So that gives you an example of just through prompting, you can actually really start rendering 3D models without like stepping into Blender or Maya and really knowing how to use those tools. And while it's basic, it could really get your idea across, you know, in thinking about how do I create a 3D website for a brand.
Well, this is all amazing.
I'm Ryan Vollum.
We're getting requests to share any and all links or resources you want to follow up with because we wind up hitting time today. I'm seeing just tons of great feedback in the chat, and feel like we're going to need to schedule a part 2 sometime for your game because.
I know I didn't even get to music generation. I could in my tiny hand song, but you know, whatever.
I'm totally game for a part 2, and I feel like a lot of other folks begin. Are you good sharing your email in the chat as well? I am hearing
yeah, definitely.
Folks already request that, and if anyone else wants an intro as you run, feel free. But this is just, you know, I was saving a few bookmarks during the call, and just love geeking out on you on all this with you. So appreciate it. Yeah, Erin's emails here in the chat and Instagram too. Thanks.
Yeah, you're like getting my masterclass in all of this. We could totally go into music, video, more coding, but that's creativity and AI masterclass.
Well, we're very fortunate to have you as our professor here. So thank you so much for joining us and allowing us to be your students today.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Thanks so much. Feel free to reach out.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.